Sweden is currently without a government. After the general election in September, the Prime Minister has unsuccessfully tried to form a ruling coalition that could be approved by a majority of the parliament, and the opposition leader hasn't done any better. To understand how we ended up in this situation, let's first look at the players involved. The largest political party in Sweden is, and has been since 1921, the Social Democratic Party, officially the Swedish Social Democratic Workers' Party, led by our current Prime Minister Stefan Löfven since January of 2012. The Social Democratic Party has played a massive role in the history of Sweden and has spearheaded some of the most progressive reforms this side of the Iron Curtain. However, since the Iron Curtain fell in 1991, the Social Democrats have grown less interested in the working class and become far more interested in the politician class. And just like the Iron Curtain fell, so did the popularity of the Social Democrats. Side note, I asked the Social Democrats if it's true that they are democratic socialists, like it says on their Wikipedia page. They said yes, and so I was like, okay, does that mean you want to abolish capitalism? And they said no, and so I was like, what the fuck? And so they were like, well, our definition of democratic socialism is that it's synonymous with social democracy. And so I was like, well then I guess my definition of a bunch of fucking idiots is synonymous with the Social Democratic Party. I didn't actually say that, but now I kinda wish I did. In the blue corner we have opposition leader Ulf Kristersson, a man so unremarkable I honestly have nothing to say about him other than the fact that I like their old leader better. He somehow managed to become leader of the Moderate Party, formerly known as the Right Party, and before that known as the Top Hats, and no, I'm not making that up. They've also played a pretty big role in the history of Sweden and spearheaded policies such as not giving working class people the right to vote, not giving women the right to vote, not introducing the 8-hour workday, not introducing public schools, voting yes to apartheid, voting no to abortion rights, voting against civil unions for same-sex couples, voting against civil rights for same-sex people, voting yes to the Iraq War, and as recent as 2008 voting yes to wiretapping Swedish citizens. Needless to say, they've never been the biggest party in parliament, although they have been included in a number of governing coalitions. Next up we have Jimmie Åkesson, a man who has gone from 5.7% of the vote in 2010 to 17.5% of the vote in 2018. He's the leader of the Sweden Democrats, a national conservative and social conservative party, or national social conservatism if you prefer. The Sweden Democrats formed in 1988 as part of the New Swedish movement, a national corporatist fascist movement which enthusiastically supported the Nazis. One of the founders of the Sweden Democrats was Gustav Ekström, who joined the Swedish National Socialist Party in 1932 and joined the Waffen-SS in 1941, where he served in the 5th SS Panzer Division and reached the rank of SS Rottenführer. He served in the SS until Germany lost the war in 1945, after which he stayed in West Germany until 1988, when he came back to Sweden to form the Sweden Democrats. But to be fair to the Sweden Democrats, Gustav Ekström was only one of two founders of the party. The second one was Leif Eriksson, who was a self-described patriot, neo-Nazi, white nationalist, fervently opposed to immigration, the building of mosques, and of course, race mixing. Much more moderate than Gustav Ekström. The Sweden Democrats today basically only care about two things: being in power and stopping immigration, although if you count forced emigration, they care about three things. But enough about them. On to the next party. The leader of the Centre Party is Annie Lööf, also known as the Margaret Thatcher of Sweden. The Centre Party is a self-described social liberal party, which means they're not actually centrists as their name would suggest. And as I would suggest, they're actually more like American libertarians than social liberals. They want more local and regional responsibility, making the central government smaller and weaker. They also care about business, wanting to lower taxes for pretty much everyone and everything except poor people, and spending as little money as possible on the sick or the elderly. They do, however, support immigration, because immigration means cheap labor not protected by those pesky social democratic labor laws. Next up is the polar opposite of the Sweden Democrats, the Left Party, led by Jonas Sjöstedt. The Left Party split from the Social Democratic Party in 1917 after the Bolshevik Revolution broke out. The Social Democrats opposed the Bolsheviks and instead favored the Whites. The Left Party supported the Bolsheviks and promptly became known as the Communist Party of Sweden. The party cared about a number of things, one of which was demilitarization. They wanted to spend less money on the military and more on pretty much everything else. although they did send about 500 volunteers to Spain when the Spanish Civil War broke out. The anti-militarist sentiment remained during World War II, which the party declared to be an imperialist war. For the high treason of being against war, the communists were promptly put in labor camps in northern Sweden, the Siberia of Scandinavia. In the 60s, the party distanced itself from the Soviet Union and Marxism-Leninism as a whole, and instead joined the Marxist Euro-Communist movement, which had a raging boner for Antonio Gramsci of all people. After the Iron Curtain fell in 1991, the word communist wasn't cool anymore, so the party changed its name to what it is now, the Left Party. They also struck the word communism out of their party program, but their youth organization, Young Left, still has it in there. You just really have to look for it. These days, the party cares about 4 things: socialism, environmentalism, anti-racism, and intersectional feminism. They also still hold on to their anti-militarist roots and oppose Swedish membership and cooperation with NATO. The Christian Democrats are conservatives. They're more conservative than the moderates and less conservative than the Sweden Democrats. Honestly, that's pretty much it. They also have a bit of a cult of personality around their leader, whose name I honestly could not remember until I looked it up. The Liberals are liberals, but like the Centre Party, they're pretty much libertarians. Their youth organization made headlines last year when they came out in support of necrophilia and pedophilia, because my personal freedoms. And they also have a leader, I guess. It's this guy. Last and definitely least, the Greens. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. You know, the Greens were relevant at some point. I can't exactly remember when, but there was definitely a time when they did something. These days they're to the right of the Social Democrats, but to the left of the Alliance, which I didn't mention, but it's the coalition of the moderates, the Centre Party, the Liberals and the Christian Democrats. This means that no one really likes them, and they only barely made it to 4% of the vote, which is the minimum required percentage in order to get any seats in Parliament. The Green Party is led by Gustav Fridolin, best known for being a tiny boy who has a pet rock, and Isabella Lövin, best known for having a last name that's kinda similar to Stefan Löfven. The Green Party says that they are the most environmentally friendly party in Parliament, but according to the World Wildlife Fund, it's the Left Party that has the most environmentally friendly policies. So there's basically no reason for the Green Party to exist. And now that we know all the players involved, let's try to form a government. These are the election results of the Swedish general election of 2018. The Social Democrats received 28.26% of the vote, down 2.75% since the last election. The moderates received 19.84% of the votes. So the Sweden Democrats received 17.53% of the votes. The Centre Party received 8.61% of the votes. The Left Party received exactly 8% of the votes. The Christian Democrats received 6.32% of the votes. The Liberals received 5.49% of the votes. And the Green Party received 4.41% of the votes, down 2.48% since the last elections, where they were actually part of the government. Now, not so much. This is the map which quite clearly shows that the Sweden Democrats mostly active in the south, in Skåne or Scania, and the moderates are mostly big in Stockholm and the region surrounding it, also in the larger cities like Malmö and Gothenburg. Big cities like the moderates, everywhere else likes the Social Democrats. Swedish television, the Swedish equivalent of the BBC, put together this little web puzzle game thing where you can try to form a government with the results of the elections. So, since the Social Democrats are the largest party, let's just start with them in government. And let's add the Green Party. This was the last government. Obviously, things have changed. Both the Social Democrats and the Green Party have shrunk, and this government would only get 33.2% support. And if we throw the Left Party in there, 41.3%. It's not fantastic. Now, the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Left Party would technically be larger than the Alliance, Centre, Liberals, Moderates, and Christian Democrats, but the Sweden Democrats don't like the Social Democrats, the Greens, or the Left Party. So the Swedish Democrats would vote against this government. Well then, let's throw in the moderates, the centers, the liberals, and the Christian Democrats. This is the alliance, and this is the government that they want, but as you can see, they would not gain any support, and the Sweden Democrats have come out and said that they would not vote for this government. The Sweden Democrats want to be part of this government, which you might think makes a lot of sense. They're all right-wing political parties. However, the liberals and the centrists don't like that idea, and they hate the Sweden Democrats. They oppose them whenever they can. So they would not be in this government, and as you can see, no government can be made. There is another option, which is the Social Democrats, the centrists, the liberals, and the Greens. And now you might say, well, hang on, that's only a 47.9% of parliament that would support that government. Well, now, the Left Party might support this government, bringing it up to 55.9% without actually being part of the government, because the centrists and the liberals don't like the Left Party, and the Left Party doesn't like them very much either. So the Left Party being in support of this government, it's possible. I would say it's unlikely. It's unlikely for another reason, which is that the Center Party promised that they would be in an alliance government. They would not want to be part of a government that is not the alliance. Okay, well, fine, let's try something else. During World War II, there was a coalition government between every party in parliament except the communists, and the Sweden Democrats obviously weren't around during World War II. So this is technically a possible government, 74.2% of parliament. But both the moderates and the Social Democrats and the centrists have said that a coalition government between the Red Greens and the Alliance is for very serious situations like World War II, not so much for just trying to keep the Sweden Democrats out of power. So what's the most likely outcome of all this? Well, my personal opinion is that this is a likely outcome, with the Left Party supporting. Is it, out of all of them, this is probably the one that's most likely to happen. Another one that's likely to happen is an alliance government which is supported by the Sweden Democrats. And is that more likely than the Social Democrats, the centrists, and the liberals and the Greens? No, it's not more likely, because the Sweden Democrats would not support an alliance government without the promise of gaining a bunch of influence, some minister posts here and there, or some policies that get through. And the centrists and the liberals do not want that at all. So what's going to happen next? Well, the Speaker of the House is currently trying to put together a government which the majority of the Parliament can agree on. If he's going to be successful or not, no one really knows. And if he's not successful, if it's impossible to build a government in this current situation, there's going to be a re-election. And that is where we are at. That's the current situation in my country. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want me to make an update video once something happens. Alright. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.